It's really interesting to see how this played out. And when you look at the revenue stream, Shoob, another thing I wanted to discuss with you is how do you think the outlook of the ACC will be when we consider the individual payouts? Because the future for the ACC, they still get a rather decent payout, $61.5 million estimated by 2029, according to our charts. And it just seems like the ACC, because they are locked into, what was it, 2030, what year?
2036.
2036. They are locked into their contracts until 2036. So the ACC cannot leave without significant financial penalty, of which none of those programs are likely going to be able to afford. And so when you factor in that these teams are stuck in that contract till 2036, it is going to be really hard for those teams to get 10, 13 years behind the eight ball by 40 plus $1 million to the other conferences. But it just sucks for the other teams in the ACC. It will be very difficult for them to stay relevant.
Yeah, that's the thing is those schools, the Miamis, the Clemsons, the Florida States, the UNCs, they're kind of in a little bit of a pickle with that grant of rights that was signed in 2014. So basically what that means, if you're not aware, is if, let's say, if Florida State and Clemson decided that they wanted to leave for the SEC starting in 2025, it would mean that Florida State and Clemson have to forfeit basically all of their TV revenue from 2025 on through 2036, which is when the ACC's contract expires. And so they'd be making $0 per year from that TV contract. And obviously they'd still be making however much money from the SEC, but it's whenever they decide to join the SEC and become part of the SEC's new contract. But that's the thing is it's like, at what point do those schools decide, hey, this is the cutoff, this is the year where this makes financially the most sense for us to pull the trigger and leave and sort of just eat that loss from, opting out of the ACC's grants of rights. And over the long term, this is going to keep us afloat. This is going to keep us alive. Because if you just sit here and just do nothing and stay in the ACC until 2036, I mean, you can just see the chart. It's going to be about at least a decade of the SEC and the Big Ten making nearly double the amount of money per year from their TV contracts than the ACC teams will. And obviously, if you're the big brands like Florida State, Clemson, Miami, UNC, Virginia Tech, even, you could lump them in there. You just can't afford that. You have to do something, but at the same time, your hands are kind of tied right now. So I know I've seen reports that the SEC is interested in those four schools that we just mentioned. Also, Virginia, allegedly, I've heard is also on the SEC's radar. That would certainly expand the footprint. UNC is a target of both the Big Ten and the SEC, which kind of makes sense. So I think UNC will have two really good options there, but it's like, we don't know if that's going to happen though in the near future. That might not happen for another few years. It's the ACC's grant of rights initially when this all started happening and these conference, TV contract projections came out. It was like, oh, the ACC is in trouble, but now it's sort of like it's protecting the ACC from having all their schools poached from them. So it's very, very interesting. And man, being an athletic director, being a school president right now at one of these schools is got to be a hectic job.
I'll tell you what, Shoob, that grant of rights deal for the ACC is both a blessing and a curse. And for the reasons that you just pointed out, it is a blessing because it is keeping that conference intact. Definitely the Miamis, the Florida States of the world, the Clemsons, if they could, they would absolutely jump ship right now. But there's no way that they can because of that grant of rights. So it is keeping the ACC intact. Another thing about that, it's going to hurt them so much though when $60 million per school is still a lot of money. But when you factor in, say the Big 12 does pull off this big pack and gets those six teams, including Oregon and Washington, the Big 12's revenue stream is probably going to rise to about $75 to $80 million a year, which is substantial, which means even they will be doing at least $15 million more per year, school to school, than the ACC. That's football programs like Kansas getting $15 million more than Clemson on a year-to-year basis. So that's just crazy to think about. And so when you're the ACC, you have to figure something out. You have to maybe try to leverage for reworking your TV deal or something. You have to do something to, stay relevant and fight in the pack. They may even try to, I haven't read anything about this. It's just pure speculation, and maybe try to expand their market. But what we could see is the ACC maybe try to add the remaining Pac-12 teams that are left out into the dark. So it's really interesting to see, Shub, because I'm really thinking that the ACC, because of that grant of rights agreement, the only thing that they can really do to be creative is to try to add those leftover teams out west, and that would expand their market a little bit and maybe increase their viewership. But that would be such a scheduling nightmare for them. But the money is the only thing that anyone cares about right now.